today is a great day. First of all, we got rain, so I'm very, very happy about the rain. We hadn't had rain in so long, but today is Mother's Day. And so it is it's a very special day. It should be a very special day. It should be a day that we not only recognize our own mothers or recognize mothers in our lives, but the influence of women in our life. And that's one of the things that I don't know, maybe we seem sometimes like we do it, but we don't do it enough. We don't do it near enough as to give thanks for the women in our life, to give thanks for the mothers that are in our life and what they do. This week, as we get into this sermon today on Mother's Day, we don't always do a sermon that is central around Mother's or Father's Day. We don't. Sometimes we just continue in our study. We've been studying Galatians, but today we're going to specifically acknowledge mothers and look at some of the traits of mothers, and I think that's going to be, hopefully it's going to be a wonderful thing for us to go through today. But we don't always do that. And it's necessary at times. Sometimes it just is exactly what God wants us to do to continue in our series. And that too would be applicable. But today, we're going to acknowledge mothers. And as we acknowledge mothers, I want to acknowledge something else, is that when parents start going through this thing of bringing life into the world and the miracle that God provides in children and stuff like that, there is a plethora of advice that's given. And it sticks with us. It sticks, sometimes it seems, with mothers more than it does with fathers. Because people have children that they bring into the world, and they have things that they've done that they feel like has, been successful with their children. And the one thing that we want to keep in mind is that every single one of us is an individual. And that's translates into our walk with Christ, right? Like every single individual in here is an individual, and God loves us as individuals, and our salvation stories are going to be different. Our experiences are going to be different. The things that we learn from and the methods in which we learn are going to be different. All the things about us are different, and God realizes that, and He comes to us as individuals, and He is the God of us as individuals. Same thing happens with parenthood. And so we give this advice, and hopefully for those that may be expecting, or those that are planning on it, or even those that have it and some of this is stuck with them, that's advice that's challenged them, or maybe made them feel like I'm inadequate, or maybe they feel like I haven't hit that goal, or maybe they feel like I don't have kids like they have kids. Advice is advice. It's not instruction. It's not the law. It's not absolute. It's not truth even. It's advice. And we all have different experiences. One of the things that I have heard more and more of lately is how more and more parents are saying, well, we need to go back to where the kids played outside and not tethered to devices and stuff like that. It's not that I don't disagree, that's good advice. But I do want to remind anybody, as a kid that grew up without devices, that we had a lot more casts and stitches. During that time frame, it was a great time to grow up, but we did. That when we were outside, we had fun, we grew up. But every parent's going to develop their style, as they should. But it should be centered in God. Centered in God. One of the things that I did in this outside adventures growing up is, again, we didn't have things to be tethered to. I'm envious. I wish we had some video games and stuff, but we would play games. It's not culturally correct, I get it. But one of the things that we would play is Cowboys and Indians. Right? I always wanted to be an Indian. I always felt like I could sneak up on somebody and take them out. But we'd play Cowboys and Indians, and we'd be running around. Because at the time, a lot of the shows and TV shows that my parents were watching anyway, my dad, were these cowboy westerns. And we would play them out in the yard. We'd pick up our little sticks and we'd run around and we'd play, and like we were going to try to trap the other person or whatever, and finally somebody would fire a fake shot and we would have to play. And then the way we played it, you would play dead like you would see on TV. sit there, and if you ever watch these westerns, when one of those cowboys or Indians were shot, their buddies would come up beside them and they'd die for like an hour, and they'd be like, no, go on without me, take the posse, get them, but tell Julianne back home I love her, and they'd have a speech, like as they're dying. There's just so much that they would say, and so we would play that out in our little games, and I guess it kind of stuck with me because in life I've always thought about these last words that we have. If it was a Western, if it was a cowboy, and you had these last words and you had these moments of where you could have your hour to say your piece, right? You could have your moment to say the things that you want to say. I've always wondered, what would I say? What would you say? If you knew you had the moment to say everything that you could say, what would you say? Well, today on Mother's Day, I want to share this. There is one person that knew the time and the hour of their passing, and that was Jesus Christ. Only person that knew the time and the hour. He knew what was coming. He knew when he was going to go. And his very last words, if you don't mind, I would like to read them. In John 19, 25 through 27, as he hung on the cross, it says, but standing by the cross of Jesus, where his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas and Mary Magdalene, when Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved, and every time it's referred to as the disciple whom he loved, we know he's talking about John. The disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, woman, behold your son. Then he said to the disciple, behold your mother. And from that hour, the disciple took her to his own home. Oh my goodness, it's such a beautiful picture because we know that Jesus was suffering. We know the torment that he was going through. We also can some degree imagine all the weight that was on his shoulders. From carrying our sin, from the sacrifice that he was making, from the plans that were coming to fruition, to knowing that he was going to rise from the grave on the third day, and that because of this very moment that salvation for all mankind was going to occur, that God's plan had come to its completeness, that in him we were going to have life. All of this is going on. That's a big moment. That's a big moment. It almost makes us feel guilty for any of us in here that might not have called our mothers yet, right on Mother's Day, because this is a big moment in Jesus' life, and yet he didn't forget his mother. As a matter of fact, she was at the forefront of his mind. As he looked over in his suffering, he sees her, and he's making sure that she is going to be cared for. Because that's how much she means to him. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture of love for a mother that we know, even though we don't have all the backstory of how he was raised and how much Mary must have poured into him. That type of love is a reciprocal type of love, right? Like we know that he loved his mother, and we can guess exactly how much in her life she's poured into him. What a great example. And that's what today's all about, is examples. In Christianity, we're told that we're supposed to be disciples and disciple makers. And Jesus says so many times that by being his disciples, that others will be aware of what he looks like through us, right? Because he says, by this you will be known as my disciples, by your love for one another. These actions that you have, people will see them and they will know some truth about me. We're supposed to be those image makers. We're supposed to be examples before other people. That's what we're supposed to be. And so today, as we're talking about mothers, I'm going to pinpoint mothers. I'm going to talk about women because we don't talk about them enough. But I want you to know then it's for everybody. Because mothers are an example to us as well, for all of us to follow and to have these same attributes in our life, to seek to make ourselves better, to follow after their examples. All throughout the Bible we have these masculine examples over and over and over, and that's great because we can glean from them as well. But today I want to see just about mothers. We have these examples. Paul, for instance, he says in 1 Corinthians 11:1, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ." We have, not only do we have people setting examples, they know that they're setting examples, and we see this throughout the entire Bible. We see people that we should be like, people that we want to be like Abraham and like Moses, like Isaiah, like David. And granted, if you wanted to, you could come up to me later on and say, I know some things about them that were bad. Yeah, you do. Because I know there's something bad about every individual, but they are people that were after God's heart, that did things that we can exemplify in our life, that we can strive to be like. But today, that's not what the message is about. We're not trying to be like David. We're not trying to be like John. We're not trying to be like Mark. Today I want to show some examples of mothers. Mothers. Nursery rhyme that I grew up with, and I guess everybody grew up with, but I haven't heard it lately, is "What are little boys made of?" I didn't know that was the title of the nursery rhyme. I thought it was about girls. And then when I read it, I was like, oh, I guess there is more about boys. But it says, what are little boys made of? What are little boys made of? Snips and snails and puppy dog tails. That's what little boys are made of. But what are little girls made of? What are little girls made of? Sugar and spice and everything nice. That's what little girls are made of. That's the part I always heard growing up, was girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice. I never met one of those girls, well, until Mary. But that's what I always heard is that they were made of sugar and spice and everything nice. Well, today, playing off of this nursery rhyme, what are mothers made of? And I want to find a couple of ingredients in the Bible to see what mothers are made of and what we should strive to be like. One, the strength of a mother. In Exodus 2, 1 through 3, it says, Now a man from the house of Levi went and took as a wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch, and she put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. This mother is Moses' mother, Jochebed. And Jochebed it literally means Jehovah's glory. That's what her name means, Jehovah's glory. And Jochebed, when Moses was born, you got to understand she had other children. She had Miriam, his older sister. She had Aaron, his older brother. But during the time that Moses was born, there was a decree. There was a decree from the Egyptian Pharaoh at the time that there was too many Jews, there was too many Hebrews in the land, that the slaves were growing too much in number, and so they put out a decree that all the males would be put to death over this time period, and Moses fell in this time period. And so what did she do as a slave? When we talk about the Egyptians and the Israelites, and we talk about how God delivered them, it is hard to wrap our mind around what that type of living had to be. Not only were they slaves, but the expectation was that they would just give their children up. Can you imagine that? Now we hear a lot of horrific things in history, even in American history, but I don't think that we've ever heard anything so horrific as a people group that's enslaved, and then you're saying, okay, well, what we're going to decide is that we're just going to kill off your children, and the expectation is not only will you not be happy about this, we expect you to hand them over. Just willingly, because it is a law that we made. And so they did. They absolutely did. The Israelites turned thousands of their children over to be slaughtered and thrown in the Nile. Neighbors would tell on neighbors if they didn't. There was no escaping it. It wasn't like they had freedoms. It wasn't like they lived out in the country or they had the privacy of their own home or even thin wall apartments. No, they lived like in tents and in a sheltered area, but it was all like a quarantine area for slaves in that area. It would have been hard, nigh impossible to hide the fact that you had a child. But Moses' mother said, yes, I am not going to deliver my child over. Can you imagine that strength? Can you imagine that fortitude that she decided, okay, because I can't be separated. You know, a mother can't be separated from her newborn. It isn't like she could just drop him off at nursery, right? She was with him constantly, and the fear was not only if she was discovered that she would be killed, but she would be ripped, her whole family would be ripped apart if they didn't kill her other children, Miriam and Aaron and her husband, that they would be separated. But she stayed with him night and day, nursing him, caring for him at the threat of her own life so that he might live. Now that is strength. That's a mother's strength. That they would be willing to sacrifice for their child. Another characteristic that we see of a biblical mother is found in Timothy, the wisdom of a mother. 2 Timothy 1-5 says, I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I'm sure it dwells in you as well. Paul's writing this to Timothy, his disciple, someone that Paul's pouring into, but he acknowledges that in Timothy's upbringing that first, that the things that he sees in him, the qualities that he sees in Timothy are because his grandmother Lois poured into him and his mother Eunice poured into him. Later, it speaks to this very thing in 2 Timothy 3:15. It says, and how from a childhood you have been acquainted with the sacred writings which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Christ Jesus. So we know that not only did he glean wisdom from them, but what wisdom he gleaned from them. The sacred writings, right? She was teaching him Scripture. She was teaching him the things of God. Because that's what mothers do. Now I know I'm pushing against some of the norms here, and I know that some of the things I say might not be absolutes, and I'm not trying to speak in absolutes, but I can say pretty certainly that in households, that when kids are first learning things, the very first person that they show is mom. Right? Later on, mom says, why don't you show dad what you were showing me earlier? And then they show you, right? But like with mom, when they're learning their ABCs and everything, they're going over it with mom. When they're learning how to draw, they're showing it to mom. When they're learning all the things in life and all the questions in life, they first come to mom because mom's the one that pours into them. And I'm not putting dads down, but this ain't your day. Moms, they instruct us. And for the rest of your life, you want to show moms things because they're the first ones, and if they're doing it right, if they have this characteristic, they're the first ones that put curiosity into our brains. To put the desire to learn, the desire to create, the desire to build into our hearts, because moms first show us that it can be exciting. Moms first show us that it pleases them, and we, from that moment on, I know as a mama's boy, that's what I want to do, you know? They teach us wisdom. The third thing that I would show you is that mothers have a nurturing heart. In In Isaiah 66:13, as one whom is a mother comforts, so I will comfort you. You shall be comforted in Jerusalem. A mother's love is nurturing, it's providing care, and it's comfort. That's what mothers do. I think it comes natural to them, or they work on it better than I do. They work on it better than men. I remember so many stories that I can share about my mother, but there was one where I was 10 or 11 years old and my mom had to work, my dad had to work, and she was working full-time. She was working at this place called Dixie Shooter Supply, and it was just a big old warehouse of, it's going to sound bad, but it's not like a big old warehouse of guns. And they're all boxed up though, right? And my mom had to work, and I got sick at school, but I wasn't real sick, obviously, because as the story will show. But I got sick at school. My mom had to stop take her lunch break to come to school, pick me up, bring me back to her workplace. She still had to work. And so she put me in a room with some coloring paper and everything else, and that's what I needed to be doing. And because I was sick, I shouldn't have been out doing anything anyway. But my mom had to work, and so this is not a testament to whether my mom did something wrong or not. It's just this is what had to happen. I'm in this room, I'm coloring. I decided to go exploring, and in the warehouse, there's just crates upon crates of guns. I didn't get into any of the guns, but I'm on the crates, and I'm like trying to climb up because this is like the biggest fort that a boy will ever find. Like, this is an adventure of a lifetime, and I'm climbing around, and I pull myself on this metal bar, but the metal bar wasn't attached, and I'm up at a decent enough height, and the metal bar comes down, cracks me across the head. I had to have like 23 stitches right in here because we played outside. But I had like 23 stitches across my head, and I remember when my mom was called and she was worried about her job because I shouldn't have been back there to start with, and I'm bleeding. She's worried about me, and my mom's there, and I know this is what's going on in her mind, but that's not what my mom tells me. You know what? My mom didn't pull up on the spot, and I'm bleeding out my head, and she goes, "Oh, Danny, I might lose my job." Didn't come out of her mouth. She didn't come out of my mouth and go, "Oh, Danny, you're bleeding so much, I think you might die." That surely didn't come out of her mouth. That wouldn't have suited me well in the state that I was in. My mom comes up, and the very first thing out of her mouth, and I mean, I'm hurting, she's like, "You're going to be okay." And I felt better. I felt better because Mama was saying that I was going to be okay. She said, "We're going to take you to the doctor." And I remember begging her. I was like, "Please don't tell Daddy." So not only did my mom have the role to worry about her job, to worry about my safety, to make sure that I was calmed down, but now she's taking on the role of protector because her son, who's hurt right now, is worried because I knew I wasn't supposed to be there in the back, and I knew my daddy liked to spank. I didn't want to later on, after stitches, to be hurting more. You know, like I was worried, and so my mom takes, in this one moment, I saw her take on all these roles to comfort me. Mothers, they're amazing. They have such nurturing hearts. In your own life, think about the countless moments when a mother helped you in distress, or you saw a mother help you in distress, or someone else in distress. The last thing, and it connects with the last one I talked about, but is sacrificial love. It would be hard for me to stand up here before you and tell you, as we're talking about mothers, especially biblical examples of mothers, to not talk about the sacrificial love that mothers display. It is a story that I have told often, but it's Mother's Day. And both of my daughters are sitting in here today. But this in the Lewis household is a representation of sacrificial love. When our eldest daughter was born, I worked and Mary worked all the time. We worked around the clock. And at that particular state in our marriage, we were ships crossing during the night. She worked night shift, I worked day shift. I left the house before it was light came up, and I came back long after it was dark. When I came back, she wouldn't be there. We'd just leave notes for each other. She was pregnant, and she worked up to the day that she gave birth. But the night before, the day before, she was going through lots of pain, and she came home from work with contractions, and I thought, here we go. We're about to go, so I'm getting everything ready. I am going to be the perfect father. I am going to do everything that I need to do. I got all the stuff together. I got everything prepared for her, this woman who sacrificed so much. I'm going to get it all taken care of. So I stayed up all night, and all night I'm bringing her like a little drinks and stuff like that. And I'm like, get you some rest. Like, I don't know what contractions are like. I know that women complain about them, but like she didn't rest. She didn't rest during the night, you know. Like, but I'm trying to get her to rest, and I'm up all night, and I'm like, the baby's coming, the baby's coming. We wake up the next morning. The contractions haven't got any closer together, but they're still difficult. So we stay up, and she doesn't go to work that day. By that late afternoon, we're finally going to the hospital. By this point, I've been up myself probably 30-something hours. We get in there, baby's born. They had to help Paige out with these forceps, and so engraved in an internal video somewhere is this moment where Paige is born, and they show me the baby, and I look at Mary, and I'm like, she looks like she's off X-Files, because her head was like egg-shaped or whatever. They had to pull her out by suction cup. So that was wonderful as a father. But Paige was born. Mary's been through all of this, through the contractions, through the actual birth, everything. And when she needs me the most is now, because she's exhausted. And at that point in time, my body says, okay, it's been about 40 hours, you're done. And I lay out on the couch and I go to sleep. And Mary has to stay up with the baby, nurturing it, breastfeeding it, taking care of her when she needed me. It was just the beginning of what I would see as sacrifice. When she was sick, or when at night, you know, there's so many different times, but that's what a mother does, though. Sacrificial love. We have this beautiful passage that talks about a Proverbs woman, and you may hear people say, oh, I want a Proverbs 31. I want a Proverbs 31 woman. And in that section in Proverbs 31, there's this beautiful passage about mothers. It says in Proverbs 31, 25 through 28, strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. That's what mothers do. I love that part where it says she opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. And right above it says she laughs at the time to come. Because even through trials and tribulations and obstacles, a biblical mother, she stands up. Doesn't matter what's going on, she stands up, and she's the one that's going to bring peace and calm and nurturing and sacrifice. She teaches us about love. When we reflect on Mary and the reason Jesus might have turned to her on the cross and said, take care of my mother, and why it was so important to him, you think of her and her commitment. From the moment that she knew that she was going to have Jesus, her commitment and her praise that was in her mouth as she said, here comes the Lord, and I will take care of him. Mothers teach us all of these things. They are examples. They are lights. And all these things that I'm talking about here, from strength to wisdom to sacrifice the commitment, all these things we're going to learn from somewhere. We're going to learn what strength looks like from someone. It might not be correct, but we're going to learn it. We're going to learn what wisdom looks like from someone. It might not truly be wise, but we're going to learn it. We're going to learn what sacrifice looks like from someone. It may not even be truly sacrificial, but we're going to define it that way. But when mothers stand up and they are mothers the way that they're supposed to be, the way that they were created to be, they are the first examples that we see of all these things. They are the first ones that distill in us this idea of what it looks like to be an example, this idea, this urge to live for someone else. So today, I acknowledge the mothers that are here. I acknowledge the mothers that gave you life. Thank you. Thank you. You're amazing. You are amazing. And I pray that you go out, and even in these characteristics that I have named today, these traits that make up mothers, that you might be challenged by them, and that you might continue to want to do better in these areas, that you might want to continue to pour into your children, even as they become adults, even as they have children of their own, that you might continue to pour these traits into their lives, that you might go out of here today and acknowledge your mother. There might be something that was spoken about today that makes you more appreciative for the mother that you had. Or, and I know that not everybody had the greatest upbringing. There might be somebody that your mother wasn't with you, and somebody else filled that role, or you saw that, or there was things, but there was another person that kind of took that place and took on that maternal role for you. Be thankful for that. Today is a day of thankfulness, but today is also a day of challenge for all of us, mothers and us included. And when I say us, it doesn't have to be fathers, men, women, all of us. We have an example to live by. Jesus told us that we were to go out and be examples to other people. He said it in so many different ways, but he said it in this particular way in Matthew 5:15. He said that people do not light a lamp and put it up under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. Today I was thinking that mothers do exactly that. In our household, and that's the only one that I have intimate knowledge of, Mary's the light in our household. I'm the intercom system. She's the light in our household. And today I believe that may be true of all the mothers that are here. So in special appreciation of mothers, and there's no way that we could budget in a gift that would be worthy of all the sacrifices that you do as mothers. So it is a very small gift, but it is a reminder of the challenges that it means to be a mother. In the back as you go out, there are little candles. They're scented candles. I have no earthly idea if they smell good or not. But they're scented candles, and they're pretty. And they're for each of the mothers that are here today, and I hope you'll take one. And as you light it, hopefully it brings you peace, but it's a reminder that you are a light. You are a light for those in your household and for those that are around you, and that you are appreciated. Today, as Ricky comes up, we're going to lift up our voices to God, because God gave us the gift of mothers. He gave us you. He gave us the mothers that we have, and we don't want to take that for granted, and we want to thank Him for them, and we want to thank you for what you do. So if you don't mind, let's stand together.